Good morning, dear Sangha. Today is May the 9th in the year 2008, and we are in Hanoi for our retreat, Engaged Buddhism in the 21st century. In 1964, I was teaching in Columbia University, New York. My colleagues in Vietnam summoned me back to Vietnam in order to help. And one of the things I try to do is to set up a school to train young social workers in order to send them to the countryside, helping the people who suffer because of poverty, social injustice, war, and so on. The war was going on. Later on, we helped setting up the Nhat Hanh Buddhist University in Saigon. This is a part of Engaged Buddhism. You have compassion in your heart. And when you have compassion and loving kindness in your heart, they want to express themselves in action. Love in action, compassion in action. So the School of Youth for Social Service is a form of expression of love and compassion. So many young people, including young monks and nuns, sign up for the training. And we found it in Phu Tho Hoa, in the vicinity of Saigon, a place where we can train young people to go out and to do the work of helping people in the countryside. We did not want our work to be sponsored by political parties. We did not want to be involved in the war. So we did not want to receive any money from the government, either of the South or the North. And we rely only on the grassroots in order to function as a movement of social service inspired by the idea of compassion, understanding, and loving kindness. I remember in 1964, we organized our students into teams of 3 people, and we went visiting every house, from house to house, like the monks go begging for food in every morning. And we come and ask for to talk with the people in the house about our intention to organize a school of youth for social service, training young people going out to help with the aspects of economics, education, health, and organization. We had studied the K-Buddhism. We had studied the Philippine rural reconstruction movement. We want to learn from other countries, and we adopted the non-violent approach of rural development and bringing help and support to those who are so poor who are victims of ignorance, sickness, poverty, social injustice, and war. And I remember our students learned to build their classroom, their dormitories by themselves. We were making bricks, we are making blocks of cement in order to build our own houses, our own living quarters, our school. We dig our own well and so on. And it's very joyful. In fact, there's so many young people who wanted to come and serve, but we could only accept 300 of them in the beginning. Later on, the number of social workers grew into nearly 10,000 people. And the social workers, they have developed a kind of doctrine, a kind of theology of Engaged Buddhism. Ân was a social worker, I remember, and he was specialized on helping farmers in order to protect the domestic animals raised for food, and he was trying to help farmers as how to not to let the chicken, the pigs die because of diseases. And he was working. He was sent to several villages in order to advise the farmers in order to protect their livestock and so on. And he was asked a question: "You young men, young women, you work so well. How much salary do you get from the government?" And the peasants asked him. In fact, he did not have any salary. He was a social worker of the School of Youth for Social Service. He was a volunteer. The School of Youth for Social Service gave him enough in order to have food and so on. So he said, "No, I'm not working for the government. I'm practicing Punya. Punya means merits. That is a popular term in Vietnamese Buddhism. You go to the temple and you do things in order to accumulate merits. It's a kind of bank account that you save for the future. If you do so many good things, and then that is your invisible bank account. In the future, you will profit from that." This is a very strong belief in Buddhist countries. You say something good, you do something good, and then these things are never lost. They are for you forever. And you and your children go profit from that kind of good karma, good action, kind of bank account for the future, Punya. And the lady said, "Well, we usually do Punya only in the temple." Wow. And he said, "Now people suffer so much in society, in the villages. Even the Buddha has to come here in order to help. So we follow the Buddha to the village in order to perform, to practice Punya." So that is a very easy kind of theology. That's a very kind of doctrine on Engaged Buddhism made up by our social workers. We are just practicing Punya, merits. And since the Buddha does not stay in the temple anymore because he saw so much suffering out here, so he has gone out and we follow him out here in order practice Punya also. This is totally understandable for the peasants in the countryside. In many places where we went, it's very difficult situation to be, because during the day, the village was controlled by the anti-communist, and during the night, the place was controlled by the communist. And that is why it's so difficult. We manage in order to not to align ourselves with one warring party, and that is very difficult. The Buddhist right view is to embrace both sides as your brothers and sisters. And you don't want to align with one side and another to oppose the other side. Your practice is reconciliation and peace. And in a situation of fire and blood, like the situation of war in Vietnam, it's very difficult for you to stick to that kind of insight and practice. And we have lost many social workers, harassed by one side or by the other side. And we have lost many of our social workers their life just because we try not to take side. And if you go to the Pháp Vân Temple, Dhamma Cloud Temple in Ho Chi Minh City to visit, you see a number of graves built for these social workers who lost their life in action because of their commitment to non-violent social service. We know that if you don't have a strong spiritual dimension into your life as a social worker, and then you will lose yourself very soon. You'll be burned out, you'll be divided among yourself. And that is why the order of interbeing is behind you, was behind you as a support. Every social worker has to come home to the headquarters in order to attend a day of mindfulness. Learning how to master their emotion, their fear, learning how to breathe, to stay themselves in difficult situations. So the spiritual practice was very crucial to social service. At that time, there was only 6 members of the order of interbeing. 3 brothers and 3 sisters. And Sister Chân Không, our Sister Chân Không is one of the 3 first sisters of the order of interbeing. I remember the first ordination of the 6 members of OI. I myself offered them a session of deep relaxation. They had worked so hard, and that was the day of their ordination. And advised them to sit on a high chair with their feet pending, and I lead them to practice deep breathing and imagining that they are sitting on the bank of a creek, and their feet were touching the cool water in the creek. We have 1 hour before the ceremony of ordination. So the session of deep relaxation is to help them to recover themselves in order to be fully prepared for receiving the 14 mindfulness trainings. I also offer them, each of them, a lamp, a table lamp for their room, because each was entitled to have a room, a bed, a table to work, and a lamp. And I wrote with Chinese characters on the lampshade for members of the first 6 members of the order of ill-bieng, like trí tuệ đăng, the lamp of wisdom, mãn nguyệt đăng, the lamp of full moon, and so on. In 1966, I got a letter from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, to come for a series of lectures. And that was arranged by the Fellowship of Reconciliation in New York for me to get out of the country and to call for a cessation of hostilities in Vietnam. The purpose is to come and call for help, and not just to give a series of lectures on the situation of Southeast Asia. So after the series of lectures in Cornell, I toured the country, North America, to speak about the war in Vietnam, the real situation of the war in Vietnam, how people suffer, and how people want to stop the war. And I offer sessions of poetry reading, I offer Dharma talks, I offer talks on the situation of the war in Vietnam. I met with intellectuals, students, humanist leaders, religious leaders, and I gave them the kind of information that were not available to them. And we toured the country with the support of the Fellowship of Reconciliation in order to bring information about the true situation in Vietnam. And in Washington, D.C., we organized a press conference where I called for the cessation of the bombing of the North, the coming into a peace conference in order to end the war in Vietnam. And because of that, I was not allowed to go home, because I did dare to speak out for peace. The government of South Vietnam, the anti-communist government, did not allow me to go home. And during that time, the war was intensified. And Sister Nhật Chi Mai, Phan Thị Mai, who was one of the 6 first members of the Order of ill-bieng, she immolated herself to call for peace. And all of us did not know of her intention. Sister Nhật Chi Mai was the eldest sister of the 3. And she prepared for her action alone. No one knew about that. And one early morning, she came to the Từ Nghiêm temple and nunnery, and she set up the statue of Kuan Yin and the Virgin Mary in front of her. She left behind a letter for the leader, the president of North Vietnam, South Vietnam, the president of America, and she said that I die in order to draw your attention to the fact that we don't want this war. We want to end this war. We don't want this killing of brothers by brothers. And she left many poems she wrote. In Vietnam, at that time, you are forbidden to speak about peace and reconciliation, because the official language is to fight to the end, to get liberation and peace. And a few days ago, I spoke about my book, Lotus in the Sea of Fire, published by Hill and Quang. And there was an underground edition in Vietnam, and many of our friends, because they circulated the books, they were put in prison, including our sister Chang Khong. Before she died, Sister Nhat Hanh wrote to me a letter. I still keep that letter. She said, "Thầy, please don't worry, we shall have peace. I am offering myself as an element of that peace. I believe that we will have peace soon." So a person who is dying worries that the other person will worry too much. And I learned of the self-immolation through the New York Times. The New York Times that day printed an article about that, and there is the image of Sister Chang Khong holding the letters left behind by Sister Nhat Hanh. Not much later, I learned that 5 members of the School of Youth for Social Service were murdered on the bank of the Saigon River, because the anti-communists wanted to suppress us. It's very difficult because since you do not want to sign up with one side, you are not protected by any side. If you align with one side, at least you are protected by one side. And if you want to be independent, you want to be non-aligned, and then you'll be suppressed by both sides. And we were suspected to be communist by the anti-communist, and we were suspected as anti-communist by the communist. It's a very difficult situation. But if you want to hold on to the line of compassion, brotherhood, sisterhood, non-discrimination, you have to stick to that line of right thinking and right action. So the School of Youth for Social Service, although having a lot of difficulty, but we were able to do a lot of good work. We established pilot villages and proved that it is possible for the farmers, the peasants to stand up by themselves and not wait for the government to help, and improve their own situation in matter of health, matter of education, in matter of economics, improving the economic conditions and so on. And then when the war became very intense, we set up refugee camps. We work for the resettlement of refugees. We sponsored thousands and thousands of orphans created by the war. That is part of Engaged Buddhism. And always we remember that if you don't maintain your practice, you will give up because of despair, of fear, and so on. In Talok, very close to the demilitarized zone, we have built up a village, Talok. We send social workers up there, and we help the peasants rebuild the village because the village had been bombed. And after we have rebuilt the village was bombed again for the second time. And in order not to allow despair to overcome, we decided to rebuild the village. I was not in the country anymore. I was in exile, but I was trying to help from the outside, the School of Youth for Social Service. We tried to raise funds to help. And there are religious humanitarian organizations in Europe, in America, helping us. We rebuilt the Talok village, and it was bombed again for the third time and the fourth time. And it was me, who is in Paris, who suggested that we should rebuild the place because we should not allow despair to overcome, because despair is the worst thing that can happen to a human being. I remember the young people come to me and ask this question, Thầy, do you think that the war will end soon? It's a very difficult question, because you yourself, you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. You cannot say that the war will end soon. There is no symptom telling you that the war will end soon. It went on and on and on and on. So with a question like that, you have to breathe in and out many times before you can offer an answer. So I breathed in and out several times, and then calmly I said, my dear friends, they are all young people, very dedicated. I said, dear friends, the Buddha said that everything is impermanent, including the war. So the war should end one day. What is important is that we're doing something in order to help end the war. Do something. And since you are able to do something, we will not become victims of despair. And that is the teaching I gave to the young people. And during the many decades I was in exile, we continue to work for peace and reconciliation in the country. Even my books had to be printed underground in Vietnam. I always send manuscript home. And although these books are published with a pseudonym, my friends in Vietnam continue to learn to have that kind of spiritual fruit that they so need. And after we set up Plum Village in France, we offer retreats of many kinds. We offer retreats for war veterans. We offer interfaith retreats. We offer retreats for environmentalists. We offer retreat for health professionals. We offer retreat for businessmen. We even offer retreat for policemen, Hollywood actors and actresses. And it's very clear that Buddhism can be offered to any walk of society. And there are many friends of ours who are able to go to prison in order to set up the practice in prison. And we send so many books into prison. And now in many countries like America, England, people are practicing sitting meditation, mindful breathing, mindful walking. And we receive from time to time letters from inmates of prisons. And I remember there was one American prisoner who said that he happened to read, to have obtained the book Stepping into Freedom. That is a manual for novice monks. And he tried to apply all the teaching in the book, and he lived like a monk, novice monk in prison. And he said that, well, I transformed my life. I am happy in prison. I'm a real monk in prison. The other day we spoke about the practice of releasing the tension in the body, holding the emotion in order to get a relief, and practice it, looking deeply into the roots of our emotions and feelings in order to get the insight. And by that insight we can get liberated from the emotions of despair, of anger, and so on. And with the practice of the 5 mindfulness trainings, the practice of the 14 mindfulness trainings, you cultivate that kind of insight, that kind of compassion that will help heal yourself and heal your family. And if parents and teachers master the practice, they can help their children, their students, to release the tension, to embrace their fear, their anger, their despair. And this is a true engaged Buddhism. We have already organized many retreats for school teachers in many countries, including Germany. And school teachers, if they are motivated by the desire to practice and to help, they can be Dharma teachers in their own school, in their own classroom, and helping their students. There are many young people who do not have a chance in their family. They have not been able to learn love in their family. They have not received love in their family. So school teachers may give them a second chance. The school can be a second family for these young people. And the school teachers can love them as like parents. And they should have enough time to sit with their students and listen to their suffering and give advice as how to practice. And these young people can go home and even help their parents, like the way young people came to our retreat, and finally they went home and they helped their parents to transform. So engaged Buddhism is our business in every minute, in every hour, and it is possible to bring Buddhism in a confessional, non-religious form. It is absolutely possible to share Buddhism without the mark, the appearance of a religion. you can practice Buddhism in a non-formal way. You don't use the language of Buddhism. You don't look Buddhist. You don't smell Buddhist. And yet you are very Buddhist. Because the Buddha said, my practice is the practice of non-practice. In the teaching of the Buddha, you can discover deep psychology. And we can put into the practice what we learn from the school of Buddhism called Vishnati Matrata, manifestation only of Vijnanavada, consciousness only. We know that we have the seeds of happiness, seeds of suffering in us, and the other people do have their seeds also. And the practice of true diligence is to handle the seeds in us. Tứ chánh cần, the four practice of diligence. And the practice is about the seeds and how to handle the seeds in you. The first practice is the good, the bad seeds in you, like the seed of despair, the seed of jealousy, the seed of anger. Don't give them a chance. Let them sleep quietly down there at the bottom of your consciousness. Do not give them, not give the negative seed a chance. Don't water them. Don't let the environment water them. So they have no chance to manifest. And they become naturally weaker and weaker. This is a very smart. Whatever you read, whatever you see, whatever you hear, may water the seed of despair, anger, violence in you. So choose an environment where you are protected. And choose companions and friends who know the practice. They will refrain from watering the seed of suffering, despair, anger in you. This is an art. We have to reorganize our life. We should create an environment where the bad seeds in us will not be watered every day. We don't water them and we don't let them water them. You know that our consciousness, as we have seen the other day, has so many layers, and the upper layers is a mind consciousness. Ý thức. And this part down here is thought consciousness, tàng thức. Tàng thức. and all the seeds are here. Star consciousness is made of all the seeds. And that is why it has the other name, the totality of the seeds. Nhất thiết chủng thức. Sarva Bijaka. Sarva means all, the totality. Bija means seeds. That is the name, the other name of star consciousness. Star consciousness maintain all the seeds, and star consciousness are the seeds themselves. The maintainer and the object of maintenance are the same.